overall business plan and the overall plan for the pit, that's specific to the traveling. So it may be that the pit would have hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., but the trucks may haul from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., depending on how it worked. So they you could have a little bit differences, but that's why we want to have specific traffic plan plus specific business plan. So anyway, questions, comments, suggestions?
I have one for you, just real quick, out of curiosity. This vision that came to you in the night, was this a dream or a nightmare? you, you take work home with you, apparently, and so
No,
I was just curious.
I couldn't sleep and I was up doing something else and I was thinking about today's meeting and I thought, we probably ought to detail that a little bit better. So,
No, it sounds great, and I think that's a great point, especially the traffic plan and stuff, because that has an impact. You can look at the gravel pits that are used in the valley here and even in the Brigham City Perry area, and some of the traffic issues that causes, or some issues. So that's a great thing.
it is. It's kind of, in all honesty, that's one of the things that brought this to light. We had a developer that's using, like I said, he's utilizing the material on site so that he can use it for his infrastructure, his roads and whatnot. And that's been running for several months and not really got a lot of
The crusher up there?
not really got a lot of complaints from the neighborhood. In fact, I was surprised that we hadn't gotten more
Yeah.
complaints. But the minute the large truck traffic started happening off-site, to and from the site, that's when people started saying, "This is different than what we anticipated." And so we'll get something in place, and we'll make sure that we can work with developers and still have good community or good residential neighborhoods. So
Where's the location of that at?
the southeast portion of the city.
Okay, so past Providence Canyon,
Mm-hmm.
south of Providence Canyon?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't get over there, so,
I go there once in a while.
yeah, I understand that. Yeah,
So will that travel plan be incorporated into this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to suggest that we put it in the code every once in a while, even though we may have it on an application form. Somebody will kind of question us how strict we hold them to it. But if it's in the code, then they really do need to provide that information. So, because that information really isn't for the faint of heart. They're going to have to put some work into it to get us the correct stuff. So we want to make sure that, and it's good to have it for them so that they can see up front. They know exactly what they need to provide for us.
so is this intended to be a safety regulation or a zoning regulation or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. It's going to be under the land use code, and it's going to be as a conditional use, but it's not one that we're putting in the use chart. It's going to be specific to this chapter. So,
Because it would
Have
just
any
be
concern?
temporary.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to. It's just a temporary option, or would we allow long-term gravel pit?
there is that ability to allow longer term mining and similar activities, but the part we're focusing on is making sure we have something in there for temporary gravel pits.
Are you concerned that by giving a conditional use permit, that under the state code, that they can expand that by state law?
I'm actually concerned that if we don't, they can. If we have something that establishes the conditions that keeps them within the realm. And it's it has to be annually renewed.
But the bill that got passed for the extraction industry says that if you have a conditional use permit on existing land, you can acquire adjacent land to it on or before January of 2026, and the city cannot deny your expansion and enlargement of the pit unless there is a severe safety concern that you can articulate and cannot be satisfied by a conditional use permit.
Well, I'll go over that. I'll go over that with our city attorney again, because I called and talked to him about this before we put it together, because I told him, I said, whatever we do, we don't want to give them the idea that they can use this new state code and then just expand.
I've met with 3 gravel pits. As you may know, I've been representing gravel pits since 1998. It's like jumping into the deep end of the pool to get familiar with this. I've met with 3 large clients in the industry and working out a plan to do exactly what the legislation occurs. And that's the first thing that I thought with this is, if you have a conditional use permit, it falls underneath the bill that got passed.
So then maybe we need to change it from a conditional use permit to something else.
I don't know the answer to that. The only gravel pit I've ever understood that was in Providence was LeGrand Johnson's gravel pit up Providence Canyon.
Right.
And the only reason I know about that is Judd, my deceased law partner, was a truck driver and lost the brakes, and he always liked to brag about how he got down the canyon without the brakes on the truck.
I'm really familiar with that pit.
Yeah.
My dad was the bulldozer operator that
Too.
pioneered all the
Do they still use?
upper
Do they still use?
areas of the mountain for the rock
Up there?
Yeah.
to find their resources. So yeah, that there is that definitely, but it's been abandoned. So and the Forest Service owns it now.
I'm not
Pretty
worried
sure.
about that. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's the only one I've been aware of in the city at all.
Yeah. So we'll do a little bit more homework and figure out what kind of a permit we actually need to do.
Well, and if he wants to call me up, I see this, it's one of the things I saw is opening the door to, you get this, and then you acquire other land before January of 26, and the state law seems to indicate the city can't stop you from expanding.
Okay, because that's exactly what we want to do, want to prevent, is we want to make sure that we have stuff in place so that he can't say that he was utilizing that and expand it more and more and more. So, because apparently there's an awfully lot of material there.
Any other questions?
No, not that I can think of right at this moment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a few questions. Does it explain anywhere else in code what temporary actually means, like the duration and volume of?
No, that's a good point.
And then another question on that is, it says that it's open to annual review. Can you just give us an idea of how that annual review would be conducted? What would trigger pulling back a permit or revoking a permit if the conditions, whichever conditions aren't met
So,
on annual review?
yes, upon annual review, they would have to come in and not completely reapply, of course, but they would have to come in and prove that they're continuing to adhere by the conditions that have been established or by the code that is established, however we end up doing it. Which we'll have to find out so that we make sure we do it correctly. And then if they can't mitigate, if they've moved to a location on the property that they can't continue to mitigate the detrimental effects on the neighborhood, then they could be denied. So,
Okay, can they renew that temporary indefinitely?
no, it's they have to come back for an annual review.
So, but can they do the annual review? Is there a cap on an annual, you know, if they renew for,
There's not a cap that says you can do this for 6 years or 2 years, or that's,
50 years?
yeah, that's what, if we're going to define temporary, that would probably be one of the things we would want to say.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anywhere where it states what type of penalties or a way to deal with violations?
In our city code, in a different title, right in the Title 1, I want to say it's chapter 4, but I don't remember for sure. But it calls out the penalties that are associated. Unless it's specifically called out in a code, it goes back to that Title 1.
Okay.
And we do infractions, Class C misdemeanors and Class B misdemeanors. Those are the 3 options we have.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
So the land use authority that approves this is the city council.
No, the city council, the land use authority that would approve this is the administrative land use authority.
Well, line 18 says, in conjunction with an approved development for subdivision, the
Oh.
city council may approve a temporary gravel pit.
That should have been the land use authority. We changed that a few years ago, and this one apparently didn't get updated. So when I was changing, that was one of the things I was changing.
Okay, because down below on line 50, you do say the administrative land use authority
Yeah,
shall make specific findings to
Right.
confirm the mitigation strategies. But it doesn't say who makes the approval of it.
Yeah, we just need to update line 18 to
yes.
correct that. Line 18's an error.
So the administrative land use authority is you, the public works director, and my
The
friend
city
to the
engineer.
left,
City engineer.
City engineer.
City engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't a person from the planning commission on that? I mean, those are all city employees.
Mm-hmm.
City engineer is technically not a city employee.
Who's a
I
city contractor?
understand he's contracted, but I mean, he's not employed, but
Well, if you want to
Uh,
find semantics with me, I'll
No.
concede that you're right, but he is controlled
No.
by the city.
he just should have his professional independence. That's the only reason I was. I don't know, that's just been the established code. I don't know why it's at that point. I can't
Well,
answer the question.
When
as to why.
when they first put it in, it was because that was when the planning commission was more involved in the subdivision process. And so in order to make sure that there wasn't a conflict of interest of having a planning commission member sitting in on something that would come to planning commission, they just took the planning commission out of all of the administrative land use decisions except for multifamily and subdivisions. And then in the recent state code change that said you take them out of final plat too, then that took the planning commission so that you're just involved in the preliminary plat, but you're still involved in the multifamily developments up to the preliminary stage.
Ordinances in the public
And the
hearing.
ordinances. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the legislative stuff, yes, you're still involved in that. The administrative things is preliminary plat and the multifamily design review. The preliminary plat part of it. Once we get through that, then the staff would just have to follow your conditions to do the final plat on that.
But that's not state code. That's basically the city ordinance. It says
Right.
the administrative land use authority is composed of.
Oh,
the
yeah, that's
following.
us. Yeah. The state code just says that the city will assign an administrative land use authority to do things. And then the city can decide who the administrative land use authority is. But a city council member can't sit on it. And I would have to look at the code because I honestly can't remember. No, the planning commission can be an administrative land use authority for preliminary plats. But I can't remember if the state code prohibits anything else or not. I'll have to look. But yes, but back in 2006 or something like that, when the code changed and encouraged cities to take the city council out of the subdivision process, out of the administrative process, then that's when we created the administrative land use authority. And back at that time, since the planning commission was more involved in the in the subdivision process, then they just left that to them and gave conditional uses to the administrative land use. So, but the city can decide, they can have multiple administrative land use people, boards. They could, like you're the administrative land use authority for preliminary plats. They could have an administrative land use authority specific to mining operations, should they choose to do that.
So just to clarify on the point that you made previously, or on this point, the administrative land use would determine or would make sure compliance for storm drain, dust control, fire suppression,
Mm-hmm.
operation,
Mm-hmm.
reporting. Okay.
I think one of the reasons too, Joe, the reason why we're set up the way we are is they felt like having the city engineer, the public works director, and now my title's the community development director, that there's an expertise there that the layman that generally serves on the planning commission wouldn't have. And I think they felt like once the code was in place and we're administratively following the code, having that kind of expertise to analyze, like to have a city engineer analyze if they're, if the business plan and the traffic plan is adequate. I think that's why they went with the three professional folks.
What's your default slope that the excavator can?
30% or greater they can't touch. Is that what you were asking?
Well, is that a 1-to-1? That's a 45, I think, isn't it?
30% would be 3-to-1, right? Yeah. 30% or greater they cannot touch.
So a run of 3, rise of 1.
Rise of 3
Rise of 3.
and a run of 1.
Yeah.
I think we're 33%. So
It's not quite 45.
semantics.
So
The default under DOGM, Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining, is 1-to-1. And they allow you to go steeper than that. Kennecott obviously does that. If you hire an engineer and the engineer certifies that this material is stable enough to do that. And if you guys are at 3-to-1, that's a pretty steep slope, whether or not the material can handle it or not.
well, they can't disturb that. Anything 3-to-1 or greater, they can't even disturb. They're not supposed to. If it's 28%, they can take that grade down, and then the grade within the pit, that's what the engineer, that's what they will have to give to us, is their recommendation for however they're doing it.
Doing this, because what you're saying is that the end result, after they're excavating for the subdivision site, that the final slope would be 3-1 at the backside of the subdivision. If they're excavating from the front
They-
to the back.
They can't create a steeper slope than that. They can't create, the hazard slope is 30%. So, yes, they could create a 28% slope. But they'd have to stabilize.
And we define 30% slope as a sensitive area.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I realize that open pit mining and that is obviously different, but ours isn't established for that. So they wouldn't be able to disturb a 30% slope. So if they have a mountain face, they can't go into it in our sensitive area regulation.
But we
Well,
can,
I'm considering a fairly flat area. And you've got some good material in there,
and you dig down
and you dig down
and create your,
and create a slope that's fairly steep without an engineer certifying that slope will hold the material behind it. And Doggin says the default is 1-to-1, which is a 45. And I guess what I'm suggesting indirectly is I think you ought to incorporate a 1-to-1 in here without some engineering. Because 3-to-1 to me seems very, very steep.
so maybe what we need to do, because the site plan has to be prepared and certified by, I could take the licensed surveyor out and just say it has to be prepared by a licensed engineer instead of giving them the option of the surveyor. And then we could, put as one of the, A, B, and Cs, we could put something about the design of the pit and the wall during the active use.
I actually wouldn't call it the design of the pit, the design of the subdivision. I'm not trying to.
The design of the site?
Yeah, well, it's doing it in conjunction with eventually having a subdivision.
Right,
We're not here just to,
right, so that,
open up the pit.
that's why I don't know that they would open up a pit necessarily, because then they'd have to fill it all back in to build on top of it.
No, I've got a former client that had a pit, down in Pleasant View, and they were excavating because the rock on the mountain was very steep. The engineers certified it. And they plan on putting a golf course in there when they're all done. But the back of the pit is gonna be really, really steep. Pleasant View City didn't want that at all.
I'll talk with our city engineer and see what he feels like we need to put in there so that we are protected.
Yeah. Or you could say that the site plan for the subdivision will address the slope and slope stabilities to be approved by the Administrative Land Use Authority.
Okay. Because the subdivision where this is involved, that has all been approved as far as what the final grading and everything will be. So if they dig, I thought you were talking about while the permit was, or while the excavation was active, while they were actively doing the gravel pit versus the end result, protecting the people in the actual gravel pit world. Not necessarily those that came after. We want those that come after to be protected too, but the grading, when this is all said and done, the grading has to be what the grading on the preliminary plat that was approved by you guys has to be that in the end.
Yeah. Well, my problem is I'm not a three-dimensional. I'd be an engineer if I was three. I would have to walk, and I may walk out there to take and see what they're doing. But, this material, depending on the makeup of it, can be pretty valuable.
It can be. It is, actually. Quite valuable.
Yeah.
I think we should do a field trip because I as well would need to see it. So,
Site, make sure that you follow the safety guidelines, hard hats.
I wouldn't go on site.
You can drive right to it.
I was down in Willard on site without a hard hat. And got me. Because I don't own one.
I'm happy to lend you one if you want.
Your hard hat and your steel-toed shoes and your safety vest.
that's awesome.
You're talking about the pit up in Prob Canyon?
No.
Oh.
This is in, it's not as up the canyon, it's on the upper bench, but it's on the southeast end of the city,
Okay.
literally on the southeast end of the city.
How far from your house?
4 blocks. 4 blocks east and a little bit south.
And what east? About
8th.
8th east?
Mm-hmm. Yep, if you go up to 8th east and go south, you'll run right into it.
Was 400 east what Kent and Pat Franson were on before they moved?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
It does talk about reclamation, and when it does get to reclamation, the slope stability calculations and some of that they are looking for, making sure that that when it's reclaimed, it has slope stability. And I think that's what you're looking for, to make sure that's applicable and integrated in that plan. So,
Well, it just saves it from becoming an aggressive and cutting away the stable material from the adjoining landowner. So, I'm not ready to ask for a public hearing on it. But I would move to move it to a public hearing if you could get us a copy of an updated one, but I don't want to put pressure on you.
I will get with our city attorney. I talked to the city engineer about it today, and he's going to look at it a little bit more. And maybe I'll get a meeting with those two together, and we'll sit down and make sure that we're crossing the right T's and dotting the right I's so that we protect the city, still allow the developers to be able to utilize resources that are available to them, and not turn us into a complete Geneva rock area. I don't have anything against Geneva, but they do great work, but I don't want to rock in their backyard any more than anybody else does.
No one wants a gravel pit. That's why the legislature stepped in. The materials were getting harder to get.
Yeah.
That is actually my last question that I have. Is there a notification process for neighbors, and how
Yes.
far does that radius go out? Is it just adjoining neighbors?
Well, we'll post the site.
Yeah. Place up there, we can get an A-frame.
You can put it on 8th East. There's a couple of neighbors that would let you put it. You've got Park Strip up there that you can put it. So
Okay,
that's how we generally do it.
A-frame.
And we put a notice on the state website, and
Our website, post office, these, Parker too.
you're talking for the public hearing, right?
Not necessarily a public hearing. I meant for when they do start doing any kind of like mining excavation, anything like that. Is there notification that's happening for adjoining
no,
properties?
when we historically, we have not notified people when construction was going to start on a subdivision development. We certainly let people know when they call and they can pass that on to their neighbors, but we've not done that. We've tried to do it with our city projects, but we haven't notified people when construction starts on a subdivision development.
Okay.
We've been quiet.
I'm taking it all in and listening to what everybody has. It's more kind of out of my area of any history with it. I was just curious. I was thinking about because there was a pit in Hiram. I think that's no longer operational and all that kind of stuff.
LeGrand Johnson's?
Yeah, before it was LeGrand's, before LeGrand bought that, because I had somebody else had me go out and look at it for a different purpose.
Is that
So
Tottenham's pit?
Yeah, it's there, yeah, where LeGrand is now, but that was just one spiral down a long ways, and, you know, I was just curious if Hiram had any code. I know they're redoing a lot of their code because they said it hadn't been updated for many, many years, but I was just curious if they had something about that. Anyway, so
I'll check.
I don't think it's an active pit anymore. Do you?
LeGrand Johnson's is
The one that's up there in Hiram.
on the east side of the road,
Yeah. So
very
they are
much
using
so.
it. Yeah, they must be entering and exiting from different, other than off the main road into it.
Well, that's where they do, right at the top of the hill.
Yeah, that's interesting. We stored a bunch of homes there years ago from the university, 40, 50, 60, something like that. But I think they had just acquired it not that long ago. But anyway,
Yeah.
I was just curious of what they might have there and that kind of stuff.
That's a good resource. I'll check on theirs.
Yeah. But I like the idea of the discussion that's happened, and then to review and maybe revise a few things in it and look at that again, and if everybody feels good at that point, then the public hearing to see. Because one of the things I looked at, that I was looking at in it is they can use it, basically what we're saying is that you can use it for the project that you're doing, and if there's more extra material than what's needed, you can take that off and put it somewhere else. You're not really approving them to operate a gravel pit,
Right.
selling to the public or other people. You're just saying you can, if you've got excess, you can move it out of there and then do something else. Because if they were to operate it as a business, then they'd have to come in for other licensing and issues like that.
Which they may want to do, but
Yeah, depending on how much there is.
But
and
that's what we
they're
need
able
to
do.
figure out. That's what we really want to make sure of, is so that we don't end up in a situation with unintended consequences, in a situation where being able to utilize that area helps the developer, helps the city, helps a few other projects. But we truly don't want it to turn into another LeGrand Johnson pit or a Parsons pit or a Geneva pit. We really do just want it to be as part of the subdivision, but if there's more material there than they can utilize and it needs to be removed anyway,
Yeah,
because they need to just haul it off when they do their final grading,
yeah.
because they don't have enough place to fill, they're just doing a lot of cuts, then we want to be able to have a way for them to get it off the mountain too. So,
Yeah, I think that's great because you're looking at it as, in my mind anyway, as a temporary thing. Not that we want to
right.
allow the code to be where you could turn it into a gravel pit, permanent type gravel pit for some X number of years.
That's what we'd like to make sure of.
But there's a lot of them where they have been able to temporarily use the material and produce material with the crushers and things on site, and that does save a fair amount of money and eliminates trucks coming in and out because they're able to produce it on site. So I like the potential for it, absolutely.
Okay.
So how do we foresee safeguarding the prevention of that? That was kind of my indefinite renewal question, is how do we make sure it's capped in a manner that it's not a continual mining?
Well, since it's associated with the approved development, the development itself already has timeframes in it. They have to, if they're phasing, they have to start a new phase within a certain number of years, so that they keep moving along. So the temporary one that's just in conjunction with an approved development or subdivision would be held to the time frame for that subdivision.
Okay,
If they're doing it
perfect.
in phases, then that means that they're selling off lots and building homes right next to it, so there's gonna be a big incentive for the developer to cease operations.
Yes.
Because he's not gonna be able to sell lots.
Yeah. Because I think that they have to look, I think there's a plat requirement that got put in about notifying people if the development is within a certain distance from an active mine. Do you remember if that got put in?
No, I just had a billionaire, literally a billionaire above the Pleasant View pit that hired Bruce, I can't think of his name,
I know who you're talking about.
to fight it.
Barrett. Baird.
And he drafted all the, if you listen to him, he drafted all the state codes for the
Yes.
legislature.
He likes to tell you that.
Okay,
It. Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Just
I
go on.
appreciate it, Scott.
My statement came across as a statement, but it really is a question. Do you want us to have a public hearing and get it scheduled, or do you want to wait and talk to this city attorney and engineer and bring another product back?
How soon do you have to post?
10 days.
So if it was on the 8th, you would have to post by Friday, day after tomorrow?
Yeah.
How about, well, I'm not comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with it going to planning commission, then going to public hearing, because you're the ones that they're going to tell all their stuff to. But then there's a part of me that would like to get the public's input on it. And so we can incorporate that to give us time to incorporate whatever. If there's things that they bring up that you feel like is important, that needs to be included. So I don't know, it's kind of sixes.
It's going to change potentially with the public input, so it's
Right.
not like it's a final work product. So if you want to move it along, I'm in a position now, I would make a motion that we set a public hearing.
Okay.
But if you don't want to, push it.
Well, I think Stephen and I can, get with our city attorney. I'm not sure what their schedules are like, but he did tell me he'd look at it and get with me tomorrow. So I think I can probably get with them in the next couple of days. And so then we could schedule it and present. And if you feel like you need to continue it or whatnot, we can do that at the next meeting too.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with moving it to a public hearing since it still gives us time to review, and no final decisions would be made at that point. We can continue to work on it.
What do you think, Bob?
Being new, I had that question for Ryan earlier, or maybe it was, if we start digging and we find that there's, wasn't a burial site that wasn't marked. But I guess the answer was,
There's certain other rules that if you find a dead body, you gotta toss it.
Yeah.
If you couldn't find that, you
Why, do you know something?
If they were to find artifacts,
extra?
they were to start digging and find artifacts,
Yeah.
they are
artifacts.
supposed to notify, whoever it is, not the EPA. I can't think of the,
SHPO would be one.
yeah,
They could contact SHPO. First of all, would be contacting the sheriff's department if they have something of that.
yeah.
And they'll lead them through the process of who the body goes to. Having experienced that, they'll lead that process.
Well, it could be an artifact too.
Yep, and they'll help lead that process.
Yep.
So,
All right, could I get a motion to move this item to a public hearing?
I'll make a motion that we move this matter and set up a public hearing.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that concludes our meeting for City Planning Commission tonight.
so you're declaring it adjourned.
I declare it adjourned.